This is a better way. Hmm. So today's episode is quite interesting. So I got this letter, which I'm going to paraphrase because I also want to be able to keep confidentiality as well, which is the cornerstone of my practice. And this person says, I'm struggling to make peace with my mom. I feel like I carry so much hurt from the way she treated me growing up. I love her, but at the same time, I feel angry and sad and even guilty for not being able to fully forgive. How do I make peace with her and how do I make peace with myself? Hmm. Thank you very much for sharing this. Um, and I paraphrased it. There's a lot more detail, but I'm not going to share that, obviously. The first thing is, let's start with establishing that there is a cultural concept across the world, especially in cultures where, family is an institution, that children are expected to be kind and nice and respectful to parents regardless of what happens. And this has made many people that I have had the opportunity to work with personally or that I know and I interact with, um, this has left a hole in their heart, which is, am I justified for being upset with my parents for working out when I was young? Am I justified for being unhappy with my dad when I told him that someone in the family tried to have their way with me and he just dismissed it as maybe childish talk? I think the first place to really start from is, what is the right way to feel? And I say that because the first confusion is that we feel this hurt, but because of social expectations, religious expectations, and the rest of them, we're not sure of how to process it. And that's where I would really start from. I think the first thing is, it's okay for you to feel justified in this hurt that you feel. There is a place for being unhappy. And the question you want to ask yourself is, why did this happen? It's a very tough question to ask, and I by no means think that it's a very easy conversation to have with yourself. You know, but the first thing that I want to establish, the baseline first, is you want to ask, what exactly happened? Why did this happen? And why should you even ask why this happened? And as we progress, I want you to follow my thoughts. You're asking why because you want to heal completely, you want to heal deeply, and you want to lead a more peaceful life. People are doing the best they can with what they know. If they know better, they will act differently. Now, this is not an easy concept. This is not something I expect you to just take hook, line, and sinker because Francis, the psychotherapist, said so. It is a phrase I'd like you to take away from the podcast and just spend some time to really think about it. And I'm referring to, you know, actual circumstances where you maybe got abused physically, verbally by your parents, or you came from a place where there was a lot of toxic environment from home. The harsh truth is that if your parents knew better, they will definitely act differently. Now, this podcast and this episode is not an attempt to excuse the behavior of your parents. No, by all means. It's to provide an exploration, as always, to get to the roots. But before we even go on, let me take a pause here and say there is absolutely nothing wrong for you to feel betrayed by your parents, to feel hurt by the things that they have done. Is absolutely normal human response for you to want to detach from them, for you to want to not have a relationship with your parents. And one of the things I want to say is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. This phrase means simply that the fact that someone is bound to you by the water of the womb, which is you're probably siblings or you were born from the same family, does not mean that you owe them loyalty or that they have earned your loyalty. Loyalty is a product of covenant that is entered into by, I don't want to use the word blood, but that's the only thing coming to my mind right now. And by blood here, I don't mean blood, literally, I mean it figuratively, which means that you guys have gone through the thick and thins and that you have forged a meaningful relationship. So it's absolutely normal and okay for you not to want to have anything to do with your parents because of how they've treated you. It's absolutely fine. But what I want to ask is, what if your parents were just moving through life, trying to figure out their way, just as you currently are right now as an adult? You know, one of the things that I heard from someone that truly changed my perspective was, I think it was a clip I saw, and then the lady was saying that she went back to the old pictures of her mom and saw that her mom got married just around the same age that she's currently married now, and her mom is late. And she said that all of a sudden it hit her that her mom was also trying to figure out life just as she's trying to figure out life at this stage. And what that did is that it opened the door of empathy and compassion for her mom. Many of our parents, and I'm talking about, for many millennia, you know, many of our parents were products of civil wars. Many of our parents have multiple layers of generational trauma. Take, for example, I can't imagine what it was like for someone to have lived through World War One and World War Two. I can't imagine what it would have been like for someone to have lived through the Biafran War and many other civil wars across the world, and how that entire experience shapes who they are and how who they have become shapes the kind of children that they raise in this world. That simple question calls to the forefront, the bigger question, which is what and from which operating system were they interacting with us and interacting with you? We are in a different world, way different from the world that they grew up in. We have a lot of resources that may not have been available to them at the time. And attempting to think about things from this perspective is to open up yourself for the possibility of having compassion and perspective into while your dad or mom was quite paranoid, while they were always angry, why they were always erratic. Now, while this is not to, for lack of a better word, minimize what they have done or make excuses, it's an attempt to try and understand what has happened. And that understanding can help you to be able to create a better relationship, because for you to have asked this question, it means that somewhere within you, you long for a relationship. You want to have a good and beautiful relationship with your parents, but this hurt, you just cannot move past it, right? It's just lingering there, it's just hovering over your head. And it's, just something that is there, and it's almost like it's never leaving, or it's just there. You don't even know. You don't, I mean, it's just something there. Now, forgiving your parents is not just about excusing them and not acknowledging what has happened. So, the first recommendation that I will give is you need to have a conversation with your mom. Now, I'm sure you don't want to, but if you're going to get to a point of healing, you must have a conversation with your mother. If your mom is still alive, I think it would be a good time for you to maybe pay her a visit or invite her over to your place and truly express how you feel. Because right now, you are an adult, right? And you don't have to be nice or play good, or there's no fear, there's no you know there's no fear that if your mom isn't happy, you're not going to have dinner or you're not going to have lunch and all of those kind of things. No, there's no fear. But it's time to face the fear. It's time to face the bull. Whether it's your mom or your dad. Now, even if this person is a bully, in quote, in every sense of the word, yes, is a bully, it's time to confront them. It's time to have an honest conversation with them and tell them how much their actions have hurt you. Now, while you can understand that they did something wrong, what you're doing now is you're opening the door for an explanation, because for all we know, there is a possibility that they do not even know that they've hurt you. Inviting them for a conversation and having that conversation is giving them the opportunity to offer you, if at all, an explanation for what has happened. And you may be shocked that your parents would actually admit that something had gone wrong and that they are willing to make amends. That they are not even aware that their actions did affect you in the negative ways that it did affect you. And that's the first step. Have a conversation. Now, after a conversation, the next thing is not just to jump back into a relationship. And I say that because one of the mistakes that we make in our cultural construct is to equate forgiveness and reconnection. The fact that you have forgiven someone does not mean that you want to have a relationship with that person, because relationship should be born out of a change of behavior and not just a sentimental proof of forgiveness. So, the next thing you want to then do, and the outcome of that conversation is going to be the determinant of how the next phase is going to be. So, take for example, if you have a conversation with your mom or with your parents, and they quite all right admit that something did go wrong and they did not treat you well, and they are willing to make amends, it makes the next phase easier. You can then begin to create deliberate efforts and activities to, you know, make room for a relationship to happen, such as maybe going over for the weekend or for holidays or calling regularly and all whatnot and all of that. And before you know what's happening, you can now start getting closer and closer, where you can now believe, or you can now begin to see that there's actually a relationship forming here. But when you do share this, and I'll use an example. If you were raised by a parent who verbally abused you or even sexually abused you, and you have a conversation and there is no sign of remorse, or there's no admitting what has happened, right? Then what you want to do next is to create very clear boundaries. And what clear boundaries mean here is you want to put this person at arm's length, because the continuous existence of this person in the immediate circle of your life is going to cause you further pain. They will have entitlement, they will guilt trip you, they will take you for granted, and they will abuse you even much more. So, you want to put boundaries. You want to choose when you pick their calls. You want to choose when you decide to pay them a visit, if you decide to pay them a visit. And like I said, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And I know this might sound quite harsh, but you don't have to be in a relationship with them because they've not proven themselves to be healthy enough for you in this new journey and life that you have begun. So you want to put them at arm's length. And if I'm going to answer the question more specifically, is what then is your responsibility to them? Now, this is an advice, and it is by no means a template for you to take. I'll allow you to make your decision. But this advice comes from a place of doing what makes you happy, or what gives you peace, rather. So, putting them at arm's length does not necessarily mean that you should cut them off completely, especially in a case where you are more financially well to do than they are. So, being responsible towards them here will mean that you could define a particular amount that you can send to them on a month-on-month basis as a stipend and cap it at that, right? Now, why are you doing this? It is because fundamentally, for you as a person, you are choosing to uphold your values regardless of the outcome. And let me explain what I mean. So, chances are that you are a person who believes in generosity or believes in the concept of responsibility, you can choose to completely cut them off because of what they have done. Now, if you do that, you may still be right, but your action is not a product of your values, but it is a reaction or a response to who they are. But to choose to be financially responsible to them with a particular specific budget in place is making decisions and carrying out actions from a place of your own personal values. So, like I said, it's an advice, it's not a mandate. And then finally, you need to investigate the extent to which you have been, and I use this word carefully, impacted by their behavior. Because as a growing child, the protection and acceptance of your caregivers plays a significant role in your complete cognitive development. And the absence of that also creates a vacuum. So you want to also check how these actions and inactions from them is currently impacting your relationships today, whether it's your romantic relationship or your casual relationship or even your relationship with yourself, which is where I want to stay. You would hear their voices that repeated, "You're not good enough. We didn't even want to have you. You were an afterthought. You are not twice as smart as your brother. You are not as smart as your sister." All of those things has an imprint on you, and you really want to investigate the extent to which this has affected you. And you can do it before or after the first conversation you're going to have with them, so you can let them know how they've impacted you. And beyond just even letting them know, you are doing this primarily for yourself so that you can start your healing journey. And that healing journey begins after you have done those two things. One, which is have a conversation. Two, which is the outcome of those conversations leading to what your action is going forward, whether it is to completely cut them off or to have them in your life, as the case may be, right? So, then my last recommendation to you will be do and be better. And I say do and be better because oftentimes we recreate our experiences. We become to our children the father we never loved and the mother we never liked. And the only way to really do this is to find a reference for who you would like to be and start to learn about becoming that person. Because your brain does not understand negatives. Take, for example, if you say, "I don't want to be a bad father," "I don't want to be a bad father," your brain does not understand the word don't. Your brain only understands, "I want to be a bad father." It removes the negatives. Why? Because your brain is focusing on something, your father. And whatever you focus on expands. So instead of you saying, "I don't want to be my mother, I don't want to be my father," you find someone who exemplifies who you want to become. As "I want to become this person." What your brain then starts to do is to find ways, point you to resources that will help you become this person. Right? Thank you so much for sharing. This is such a brave message. And I hope that this my response helps you. As always, be kind to yourself, and you know that I'm rooting for you.